Okay guys, it's Army Wife here. I talked to some of my subscribers and they were interested in the health nut bread. Actually, primarily it was SoCal, so this is especially for him and his wife, because his wife, he says is her favorite bread. Okay, I bought this loaf because I wanted to compare mine to the actual bread itself in the store. This is the first time I've bought bread in over 6 months. And of course my husband has duty today, so I made him some sandwiches out of it before he left, but this is what it looks like. And it has walnuts and sunflower seeds and all kinds of stuff in it. So what I'm going to do is read off the ingredients that I'm going to use, and then I'm going to have to do some grinding and stuff, and then after I'm done doing all the grinding, I'll come back as we put it together. So we'll start with, we're going to put some whole wheat flour, which is my hard red wheat that I ground myself. We're going to use some regular white flour. We've got sugar, olive oil, oats, potato flakes or potato, whatever you have for instant potatoes works too. Milk powder. Actually, that's my potato flakes. That's my milk powder right there. Some cornmeal, some kosher salt, some wheat gluten, barley. I'm going to be grinding up some of this barley. I'm going to use a little bit of wheat germ, and I'm going to grind up some brown rice into a flour. Like I said, I'll bring you back for that. Here is some sunflower seeds. I have walnuts, and I have hazelnuts. Now let me tell you the trick. These hazelnuts cost me like 35 cents. I went to the mixed nuts section at Wally's, and I just picked out the hazelnuts that I wanted, and I'll just crack them myself, because I can't find, hazelnuts in a package like that. So that's what I did, and I couldn't find them in a bin by themselves either. I know that you can get them. I can get them at like Fresh Market and a few places, but that's a long ways from my house, and they're really expensive, and I was just happened to be at Wally's, so I got those. We're going to use some molasses and some hot water and yeast. My yeast is still in the refrigerator. So when I get everything, the stuff that needs to be ground, I'm going to grind up some of the barley. I'm going to grind up the rice into a flour, and I'll come back to you. It appears that y'all can see. So I'm not even going to ask, since I know you're not going to answer. So I'm going to dump 3 cups of warm water into my bowl that I had already put a 1/4 cup of olive oil into. I'm going to make sure that I scrape out all that yeast. It was 1.5 tablespoons of yeast that I put in here. Alright, so give that a little stir. Spatula here so I can scrape this one off. The yeast is sticking to it. Okay. Alright, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of honey using the same measuring cup that I used for the oil. Now I'm going to be making a lot of bread with this recipe, and it will freeze very well. And that's what I will do with it, because there's only 2 of us here most of the time, so I don't have a need for all that. You know, I forgot to put my egg. So I added my 3 cups of warm water, a tablespoon and a half of yeast, and a 1/4 cup of honey on top of my 1/4 cup of olive oil that I had in here. So now I'm going to start slowly adding more ingredients since this yeast is blooming. So I will add, now this is a 1/4 cup of barley that I ground kind of it's kind of between coarse, it's a little bit more coarse than cornmeal, but I ground this barley up in my blender, and there is a 1/4 cup of this. Now I'm putting this in here now so that it can kind of be in the warm water for a little bit longer to soften up a little bit. So I'm just sprinkling that on the top. Next thing I'm going to put in is a tablespoon of wheat germ. Whoops, I just sprinkle that too, but okay. I have a 1/4 cup of demura sugar. This is, you can use white sugar, you could use brown sugar, whatever you want. I'm just going to use the demura sugar. And it's just the organic whole kind of sugar. Since we're doing a healthy bread, I thought, you know, we'll use the good stuff here. And now I'm going to add in my potato flakes. Now I have a 1/2 cup of potato flakes. My yeast is foaming up really nice. And now I have 2 tablespoons of wheat gluten that I'm gonna put in here. Let me see if I can get the camera a little bit. Of wheat gluten, I'm gonna sprinkle that on top. Okay. And now I have a 1/4 cup of cornmeal. And I have a 1/4 cup of powdered milk. I have a 1/3 of a cup of molasses. And I didn't spray this before I poured it in there, so it's not wanting to come out very good. Okay. Now I'm going to add in a 1/2 cup of rice flour, and that was brown rice that I ground up into a flour. And now I have a 1/4 cup of oats. Give all this a stir. Now I'm going to let this sit for 15 minutes and let it become real foamy and spongy, and let that yeast get really good and active, and then I'll be back. 15 minutes, and so now I'm going to start by adding 3 cups of my home ground whole wheat flour. stir this up a little bit. Kind of got clumpy. I don't sift, so I just try to kind of fluff it up when it gets kind of hard looking. Not hard, but when it looks kind of clumped up. So this is my version of sifting. Okay. All right, there's one. There's two. And there's three. Okay, so that's what I'm going to start with. Now, when I'm mixing this in by hand without my KitchenAid, and my KitchenAid does work, by the way, thanks to everybody who sent me messages. The brushes are just fine in it, and I had just overworked it that day, and I was kind of just being funny in that video anyway. I guess sometimes my humor escapes people, but when I'm really serious, you know it, because the subject matter is a serious subject matter. And if it's not a serious subject matter and it's something as simple as a KitchenAid or bread, I tend to joke around a lot. So, okay, so I got this 3 cups mixed in here really well. Let me show you what it looks like. It kind of looks like, let's see if you can see in there. Kind of looks like peanut butter, actually. Kind of runny peanut butter. So that's kind of what you want it to look like after your first couple of, first 3 cups of whole wheat flour. All right, now we're going to start slowly working in the rest of our flour. So put you back on your stool. And so I'm going to go ahead and add a half a cup more of my whole wheat flour, and then that's the last of the whole wheat flour I'm going to use. The rest of this is going to have white flour. Let me put this away. Now, if you watched my other bread video, you'll know that the measuring of the flour is really hard to do because of, you know, what the temperature is outside, or the humidity, and just different things. Once you get that 3½ cups worked in there, you're going to pretty much not measure much anymore. What you're going to do is get my white flour. I have these, I used to be a Tupperware consultant, so I have all these little Tupperware things. And that was years ago. Tupperware has come so far since I was a Tupperware consultant. But anyway, that was back when we lived in Oregon. I was actually the #1 Tupperware consultant in the state of Oregon for a very short period of time. But thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, I'm just gonna sprinkle a scoopful on here. And I'm gonna work that in.